I kind of want to hear from your angle, sort of what you remember about the sort of the first few years of fiddle for Selwyn.
Yeah. Well, the first few years, so I Selwyn told the story of how she wanted to play violin. I tried to get her to play something else. I had a very wise music teacher that I just had a quick phone call with who said, I've met with a lot of frustrated children later in life, as teenagers who always wanted to play a certain instrument and their parent made them play something else. And so he said, if she wants to play violin, even if you don't know anything about it, you should let her play violin. So I took that advice, and even though it was a little bit jumping off the cliff for me because I didn't know anything about it, right? I didn't even know you had to tighten the bow, had this big bow hairs all over the place, and I thought it was broken. I had no idea that you tightened a bow. I mean, that's how little I knew about violin and strings. So the first few years I really tried to just instill good habits. I mean, because I could read the music, but she wasn't really necessarily reading the music yet. So it was really setting aside time and finding a good rhythm and a good practice of this is how you set aside the time, and you go through what you've been given by your teacher, and you find something that you liked about what you did, you find something you think you could do a little better, and then you try to do that, and really short periods of time where she would do it. So the first few years was really about that. And Selwyn has one way of looking at how she sounded when she was little, and of course everybody's little quarter-sized violin never sounds all that great. But I think what really helped was having teachers, or her teacher who would come in, or Duane at camp, playing along with her. And all of a sudden, something that she may have been doing as open strings as an exercise, all of a sudden became this glorious tune because of somebody coming in and playing with her. And so I remember that in the early years, that there was always this way of instilling habits, but then having that just gratification of playing music. And for Selwyn, a lot of even her early years, I think the first day she got her violin, she was making up songs. So, and her teacher at the time was like, oh, I've never written a song. And I'm trying to help someone notate in whatever D1, D2, like figure out like, how do we notate this? I don't even know what notes you're playing, but you want to be able to play it again, and you want to be able to play it for your teacher. So I would try to notate it, and she would play it. And even her, her instructor at the time was very supportive, but it hadn't ever even occurred to her to write music like that. And for Selwyn's experience, from the very, very beginning, it was about also making up her own music. So
there are some kids, no matter what it is that you do, they're going to just kind of plow through and they're going to succeed. And I wonder if Selwyn is one of those kids that, regardless of like the kind of what the instruction, what the experiences were like, she was determined to be playing and to be writing music.
Yeah, she would have at some point. I don't know if she would have stayed with violin, or because there was still a lot of sensitivity around that, and I think it took having a structure for her to stay with that and to progress. And so having, a time set aside to practice and trying to do that. So she would have found some way to make music. It might not have been something like that had the learning curve that violin does, but she would have found something. But I do think there was a lot of it that had to do with making it part of her life in that way, in a structured kind of way, and having the support like that.
So tell me a little bit about sort of how you created structure. What did that look like in your house?
Right. So, like I said, I couldn't really play along with her. I mean, I could on those beginning books, I could kind of decipher what she was supposed to be doing. I might be able to play it along on the glockenspiel or something. Like, this is the way it's supposed to sound, and that's what we found. Like, and I'll get to the structure in a second. Was, if she played a lot by ear, so then she'd figure out where the notation came in. But we had a specific area set aside. We had her violin out and at the ready. We had a structure, like I said, where we would play through something. She would play through something she was given to practice. She would find something that she liked about it, and then she'd find something that she thought she could do better, or maybe I thought she could do better. And so we had this, I think that kind of going through a lesson like that, as well as having a dedicated space and usually a dedicated time, like in the morning. Morning always seems to be the easiest to kind of get those things done. And she was homeschooled, so we have, more options for, flexibility in terms of our day. The time when she was in a bricks and mortar school, when she was in a school, it was a lot harder to make sure that, practicing has to happen before you leave for school, because that was really the most successful time of day, was before she went to school. But it was hard sometimes of the year.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that time is always the sort of the most kind of the rare commodity, I think, for a lot of people trying to sort of make that happen. So how much time was happening? Were you yourself and kind of
spending?
There's your investment, and then there's also Solon's investment of time, but I'm kind of curious about that element of it.
When she was younger, or whenever? Okay, well, I have to say, we went through the young phase really quickly. So I helped her for a few years. And then probably by the time she was 8, I don't remember, I don't know, she was really doing it all on her own. And now for the last few years, it's been entirely on her own. I might say, did you practice? And that's as involved as I get. And so in the beginning, it was, setting aside that actual time of 15 or 20 minutes a day. And then as she's gotten older, I don't think the practice sessions, for me, it's not so much of it's more the support of finding that community piece that we talked about, that feels so essential, especially at this point in her life. And so it's more finding those opportunities and trying to make those happen because of where we live and how we have to work to find those connections and get to the fiddle jams and, drive to the Bay Area, wherever the San Francisco Scottish Fiddler meeting is happening, or, making those kinds of things happen. So that's kind of more my time investment now, is being facilitator and coordinator and driver and things like that. Whereas Solon probably spends, I don't know, it could be anywhere from 10 minutes a day to 2 hours a day, depending on how she's feeling about what she's playing and what she's doing.
So what would you, when you look back, what would you do different, or what would you do more of, or what knowing what you know now?
I think through all of this, the highlight and what sort of drives it is, and you're not paying me to say this, is finding the Creekside Strings and seeing the fiddlers from the very beginning, because having the community and having the connection. So that was like the great thing we did right, was getting her started right away in connecting with other people who love music, who want to play music, who want to share music. And that was, I think, the most important thing. And living where we live and being remote, the hardest thing was we didn't have a consistent teacher who taught the way she was learning in the summer times. And if I had to go back and try to do it again, I would probably try to find, had that instructor, that right fit. We really struggled for a long time trying to find the right fit of instructor. And like I said, coming to the camps every summer was, it's like it finally got all put together, and that being able to play with other people and, giving to other people in that way. And that's certainly what's carried on and feels like one of the most important aspects and enduring aspects. But if I could have gotten her into a community, a more solid community sooner, and there's the San Francisco Scottish Fiddlers, where we are, and even as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, I could have gotten her involved. But most of the time, a parent is also involved, and someone didn't really want that. I mean, she always has been highly independent. She I mean, you tried to get me to play ukulele. And it was like, someone was like, no, you are not going to play with me. I do not want you to play with me, which is fine. It wasn't said in a mean way. It was just, this was her thing. And so I've always, if I could have gotten her involved more, earlier on in a community aspect, I think it just would have been all the better. But
right, in some ways it kind of boiled down to you having to sort of supplement the energy that could have been provided by the community, but it kind of needed to be you sort of having to sort of make things happen or continually maybe schlepping her around places. Yeah,
or just not knowing how to get into that community. People were very welcoming, but it was just a little overwhelming for me because I didn't know do I drop her off at the door at the meeting and then what do I do? And because it wasn't a scene that I was familiar with at all. And, over the years, we've of course found out how welcoming and how incredible of a community they are. But in the beginning, it was very intimidating for me.
What kind of advice do you have for parents that are thinking about doing music with their kids?
Well, I love the piece of advice that I got in the beginning, which was about let your child choose the instrument. If they gravitate towards something, go with it, even if it's not in your comfort zone. I think the other is, I mean, everybody is so individual as far as how they like to do things, but I do think if they are young, I think establishing a practice of a habit of where it fits in your day and it just becomes something you do, even if it's 5 minutes, I think it made a difference because it becomes more just it's something that you do and there's not an expectation of a level you have to meet. It can kind of organically go where it needs to go without pushing, because that was certainly, for us, our goal was much more not Carnegie Hall, but let's be able to take an instrument and make music with people all over the world and have fun and share a common language kind of experience. So I think, and me not being, I had music as a child and did a lot of different musical things, and music was a big part of our lives, but I wasn't able to help her and support her. And while I'm sure that's really helpful for some children, here we have Solon, who's done just fine without having a parent play along and being able to just support them where they are and make that investment in time, and that you don't have to be a musician to have your child become a musician. You can become one if you want. But I keep thinking I'm going to sneak down to Solon's, take the bow ron off the wall and start, teaching myself or, doing some things like that. But we'll see.
So, you have, you kind of came into this whole thing with more knowledge than your average person about creating habits and routines. And so I'm wondering give sort of like an idiot's guide to sort of
how you do that.
How do you do that? How do you create routines? Say let's limit this.
Yeah.
Let's say you've got a parent of somebody who is starting and they're 6 years old. What would you say for that next year? What could they do to kind of create a habit that works in the way that worked for Sullivan?
Right. Well, I think you have to understand what is important to the child about it. Like where they're coming, if it's a love of music or wanting to make music, or maybe they don't really love it, but you want them to try it out and get to a certain stage. So I think it's understanding where their motivation is coming from, and it might be it's always better when it's sort of self-driven, but it can also be something that is environmentally supported. And we used chocolate chips for a little while. I think we had some rewards at some point. So I think, and also starting small, which is, if the practice is 5 minutes and you play through one piece once and you find something that you liked about it and something that you want to do better, and you stop there and you just set the bar really low, but it's something that you do every day. I think that's also helpful. what else for getting that? I do think at a very young age, the structure and having the parental support it is pretty critical.
Yeah, one of the things I'm sort of discovering is that how kids learn in the early stages has a lot to do with how much the parents have that kind of capacity to create structure.
We certainly saw that dabbling in the Waldorf school system for a little while, where string instruments were, required. It was very interesting to see parents who, where they're getting it at school, but they're expected to practice at home, but it was not a supported practice at home. And so there were always so many other things that overrode that. And I never thought about it that way before. Because it was something that we chose to be in our life. And I think people think, oh, they're getting it at school, so, they're getting it at school. But, that's not, we came from a different angle.
I want to know what success looks like for you for Selwyn with music.
Oh, success. I think, first of all, I do think it's critical to feel successful. And even when children are little, they have to feel successful. And success for us is, I don't know if I could speak for Selwyn. I know as a parent, for me, success is getting to that place where she is enjoying playing music. She wants to play it. She has her own desire to pick up an instrument and share that, where she is giving joy to other people and choosing to give joy to other people by playing. She recently did a concert for my mom, who's going through cancer, and she just wanted to play for her and dance for her as just a way to give to her. And so to me, that feels like success. And maybe another part of that is also how often Selwyn will turn to me and say thank you for supporting me and providing lessons and doing that. To me, as a parent, that feels like the ultimate success.
What do you imagine it'll look like for Selwyn when she is your age?
Oh, boy.
Will music, do you think, be part of it?
I think so, because I look back, I was a kid who had a lot of competing interests and a lot of things going on, and I let music go at her age now, like 13. And I let other things override. So I think Selwyn has the community and she has the support that I believe when she's my age, when she's 50, she's going to have, it's still going to be part of her life. She's either going to still be playing with the Scottish fiddlers, or she's going to still be finding a group of people she loves to play with, and maybe she'll be instilling it to her kids, or maybe she'll be teaching lessons. I truly think it's going to be part of her life forever.